Why are so many dogs suffering from health issues? Actress Katherine Heigl, who's helped save over 16,000 dogs through her foundation, says she's seeing more issues with dogs' joints, odors, and health than ever before. And after doing a ton of research, she feels there's one place we can look to support any dog's health: their food. So she decided to create something she could actually feel good about feeding her dogs. It's called Superfood Complete. Superfood Complete is made with over 30 of the healthiest ingredients on the planet, including several superfoods vital to your dog's health. Badlands Ranch also sponsors the Jason Debus Heigl Foundation, which has helped rescue thousands of dogs and place them in loving homes. Dogs across America are trying this food and experiencing amazing health benefits. Go to badlandsranch.com/save50 and order right now to get up to 50% off your regular price order with a 90-day money-back guarantee. If you want your dog to experience all these incredible things, go to badlandsranch.com/save50 today.
When you need mealtime inspiration, it's worth shopping Kroger, where you'll find over 30,000 mouth-watering choices that excite your inner foodie. And no matter what tasty choice you make, you'll enjoy our everyday low prices, plus extra ways to save, like digital coupons worth over $600 each week. You can also save up to $1 off per gallon at the pump with fuel points. More savings and more inspiring flavors make shopping Kroger worth it every time. Kroger, fresh for everyone. Fuel restrictions apply.
The following podcast may contain discussions supported by science that may be considered dangerous to some listeners and conspiracy theorists. Discretion is advised.
The Three Down Greencast is brought to you by Lucky Bastard Distillers, Saskatchewan's premier distillery, and by the Pile of Bones Brewing Company, brewed in the heart of Regina. Welcome to the Three Down Greencast. You are listening to the internet's only in-game interview podcast. I'm Joel Gasson with John Fraser, as usual, as we have plenty to get to, as week one, of course, for the Saskatchewan Rough Riders is in the books, as the Edmonton Elks handed them yet another win.
On a silver platter, it's
not quite
amazing.
not quite as egregiously as some of their previous sort of brain farts that gave the Riders a win. Of course, there's the epic Rouge debacle of last year that we'll never forget. The Riders did have to make some things happen on their end in order to come back, but they still were Elks, and the Elks were Elksing, and we will get into that game. We'll look a little bit ahead to the game against Hamilton as well. The Riders have introduced this year's Plaza of Honour inductees. A couple of them are probably a long time coming. And we're also going to talk a little bit as well about, one of our favorite topics here on the Three Down Greencast. That is, of course, our friends at the Sports Network, as they used to be called. I don't even know if TSN no one really acknowledges that's what TSN stands for anymore, do they?
No, and even working, behind the scenes with them, I've never heard it.
Yeah. That's what it was. It was the Sports Network way back when, basically, is what the thing stood for.
Well, and now all the jokes, the Toronto Sports Network and all that stuff, how even last night I got home from the Rattlers game, and it's the third item on the docket was Mitch Marner trade rumors.
Yeah. It must have been pretty easy to get out of SaskTel Center yesterday, at least. Sorry, what?
Tell you what, I'll tell you it's easier than it is for a Rush game. I don't need a half-hour post-game show to let traffic dissipate on that one.
Even a Barriers game.
I'm just biting my tongue. I'm biting my tongue, Gas.
TSN, of course, during that game, of course, the Riders-Elks game last week, understandably, the Elks before the game and during the games throughout celebrated their 75th anniversary.
Yes.
And, of course, the Elks and Edmonton franchise brought a bunch of the legends back. Warren Moon, Ricky Ray, all the likes were there. Matt Dunnigan was there.
Yeah.
So why he wasn't working the game instead of Glenn Suter working his 12th game in a row, I have no idea.
In fairness, I watched, Dunnigan was on the panel, was it the next day or the day after?
Yeah.
And
he
that
was on
man
Sundays.
Was hung.
He was on Sunday's game.
Oh, yeah. That man was hung over. So maybe that has something to do with it. Maybe Matt was like, I just kind of want to dominate some beers. So Glenn, go work, your 14th game in a row.
Maybe that was the case. But I mean, his appearance in the booth was one of the better interviews because he actually works in the booth and knows how it goes.
Right. What a novel concept. A professional broadcaster knows when to shut the fuck up when the play on the field's doing something.
Mm-hmm. So naturally, instead of running, a pregame show, because we really had to get the SportsCenter top 10 in for the 160th time in the last 2 days before this game. Again, credit to TSN and the league for moving this game from 5 p.m. local to 2 p.m. local, so it didn't conflict with some hockey game. But that's kind of where the credit ends on this broadcast. Dusty was great as always, but the sideline interviews with some of the guys, I believe Warren Moon was down there, fine.
Right.
Those are usually short, they're snappy, they get them over with.
Yeah.
They're shot back to the booth pretty quick, it's all done and over with. But then, of course...
That's because sideline reporters know what to do. And that's honestly one of the things you have to, as a guy that's worked sidelines before, it's similar to color commentary in a way that you're like, okay, I know I need to get in and out of this quickly, so I have to be snappy. And that's the whole mentality of a sideline reporter. So yeah, some of the sideline stuff wasn't terrible, but
then I believe I got them mixed up. I believe it was Ricky Ray on the sideline, then they had Warren Moon in the booth, and of course Matt Dunnigan in the booth. The Dunnigan one absolutely was fine because he basically just took over color commentary for a bit and it was entertaining. Right. The one earlier in the game, that's when, I believe Trevor Harris threw one of his interceptions. It wasn't right away, but it did happen eventually.
Yes.
And it's a discussion we've had many a times on this podcast. I've written about many a times on the website. I feel like we're just, kind of yelling into the echo at this point. Like, I honestly don't believe TSN is ever going to stop doing this. But can we please just run a pregame show with all this stuff? And this would have been a really easy pregame show. You don't even have to do a specific pregame show about this game. It would have been real easy to record about 22 minutes worth of Elks history and run a whole thing on the 75th anniversary of the Elks because this was the game that they were celebrating it. Storied franchise, etc., etc. Would have been really easy to put in the can. Don't have to pay anyone extra. Don't have to take any time off the air. It's just, here's a half an hour of filler that actually makes sense for what is about to lead into this program.
Well, the other thing that absolutely chaps my ass and bothers me more and more and more as I've worked for TSN as a contract employee through the rush, not directly for TSN, I feel like I have to put that disclaimer in there, is the adaptability of all the producers that work on the broadcast, right? Like, obviously we're not working with the national guys and stuff like that, but every time you're doing a broadcast rundown, there's been times where it's easy to add a minute here, and not really bloat the broadcast. Like, if you wanted to do the interviews, you look at what happened with Game 1 of the Stanley Cup Final. They had this, half hour of, introducing the players and their hometowns and all that kind of fanfare. Tell you what, it's so easy and it's done so often that you could just, out of your commercial breaks, add 2 minutes. You hold the clock for another 2 minutes. You let the players know what's going to happen. You have your interviews. It's not a difficult thing to do. And the response of the fans, the people that watch this shit, is so overwhelmingly negative. Like, how do you not, it's like everybody tells you it's bad, and you're sitting there going, no, it's good. You sound like my 3-year-old when I'm trying to tell her what to wear in the morning. It's just stubborn, it's tone deaf, and it doesn't add anything to the game. It takes, and my big thing, and I've said it before, and I will say it again, that not only does it disrespect the person you're interviewing, but it disrespects, the entire broadcast, the fan base, what's going on, and it disrespects your play-by-play broadcasters. There's big moments there that you want to stay informed on, and I think it's comical, and I wish more people would pull the Max Kerman of the Arkells and just be like, hey, shut up, I'm trying to watch this. And that's the only way it stops. But here we are, right? And even another, to compare it again to the NHL broadcast, did you see Charles Barkley? I think it was game 2 of the Stanley Cup Final. Did you happen to see the clip of that, Gas?
No.
Okay.
I didn't.
I know, but I'm surprised it didn't. It may have gone viral that night because I was doing a social media break that night, and Kyle Bustakis is coming back. They lengthened out the period breaks at the Stanley Cup Final because it's a big game, and he's talking to Charles Barkley, right? Charles Barkley, there's been some crossover with the NHL and the NBA on TNT. Well, Charles is hammered. Charles is like 10 sheets to the wind, but you look at what Sportsnet did to squeeze in an interview with Charles Barkley. They're like, okay, we're going to come back from commercial. We're not going to cut to the panel. We're going to come back 3 minutes early. We're going to do this really funny broadcast with what ended up being a super hammered Charles Barkley that gave a shout out to Rod Black and Don Cherry on Sportsnet. Yeah, like he's like, and I know like Charles has that bit of a drawl to his voice, right? No, this man was slurring. This man was a shout out to Don Cherry, Christine Simpson, and Rod Black. Like on Sportsnet. I'm like, I don't know if that was intentional, but that might have been the greatest thing ever. Like if Rod Black somehow had a backdoor to Charles Barkley to put him up to that, Rod Black's my new hero.
Yeah, because that's the connection I'm struggling with here. Because at least like, yeah, okay, Don Cherry, Christine Simpson have worked on Hockey Night in Canada in various roles forever, or did.
Right.
Rod Black, as far as I know, has he ever even done anything for CBC? In the past?
No.
He definitely hasn't worked for Sportsnet.
No, and I don't think he's ever worked for the CBC. And right now,
so
he's
funny.
like...
So unless that's just the name of a Canadian broadcaster who came to mind because he went viral when his son hit a home run, and he was calling it because he was being interviewed.
Right, and that's fair. But I mean, like Sir Charles, he's a pretty funny, entertaining guy. Like I almost feel like he must have crossed paths with Rod Black because I'm sure Rod is like.
Maybe. Well, I mean, he would have probably when he was in the NBA because Rod used to host the Raptors games.
Right, and they used to send him for coverage.
Mm-hmm.
Of the NBA Finals, like Rod.
So Rod's probably the guy out of all three actually knows.
100%, because I can assure you one thing that broadcasters from Canadian stations do after the game. It is not like Anchorman. We are not throwing grenades and tridents at each other. We're all finding a bar and getting smashed at.
Yeah, they all hang out together for sure. Yeah,
100%. All the media hangs out together. Like, I mean, not with some podcasters, but
no.
Heyo.
The other thing, so obviously we've talked enough about the in-game interviews over the years.
Yes.
The one thing they've seemed to have added to the broadcast this year, the only other thing that's changed, because only one thing can change a year. Last year we finally got timeouts on the bug.
I know, that was so amazing.
This year they've added a camera in the command center, which is cool.
Yeah.
We don't get to hear anything.
Which is
so
ridiculous.
For all we know, like it's like, okay, we've proven to you this command center exists. For all we know, this could be B-roll of the command center from God knows when.
You know what they need? You know what they need to do, and
like, no, I don't know. Seriously, like, I do not care to see just a shot of the command center of them working if I can't hear what they're talking about.
You know what?
What's the point?
What they need to do?
I've been told by some people it'll spoil the play. So what?
So you're gonna laugh at this. So I've been watching a lot of cricket. The cricket channel is on free preview. Okay. And I don't know. It's one of those sports like you and I both enjoy like kind of chaotic sports. Like right now, Super Pestis is like our thing. Mm-hmm. It's like a hybrid of baseball and slow pitch and find the ball in the dirt. It's great. So during cricket matches, they have the video umpire hooked up not to the broadcast, to the PA announcing system in the arena.
Why not? Even better.
It's great. He's like, you can actually hear him and hear like the echo of him going, all right, take a look at that. Take a look at this. And away we go. Right? Like, how can you not, like, even, again, working CEBL last night, working, Canadian professional basketball, and the referees are instructed that, although, me as the PA guy, I'm not doing live commentary of the review, their proper procedure is to stop, explain it to me so I can explain it to the fans, and then go from there. So you think you get, like, come on, guys, figure it out.
Yeah, I mean, the UFL it's one thing they've done really well with their broadcast is you get to hear the conversation between the official and whoever their video review guy is that day. They basically rotate between whichever network's, like, rules analyst is essentially in charge of the video review that day. But,
right.
Yeah, like, this isn't hard. And I don't know. Like, I'm saying if you're going to do that, go all in. If not, don't bother. Mm-hmm. Like, half-assing it just does not... It adds absolutely nothing to the broadcast. Like,
Other
cool,
than
there's three guys sitting there, and you can see a bunch of screens, and some people have already started adding some different things on the screen, so cool.
and maybe one of them is Andy Fantus. We can't even tell if one of them's Andy Fantus.
One of them's supposed to be. He's apparently left the Ticats audio network to go work in the CFL Command Center, but again, the only shot we have is from the back far corner where we see the back of their heads. So if you know what Andy Fantus' bald spot looks like, you may be able to point them out.
The craziest thing is there are probably people that listen to this podcast or friends of those that listen to this podcast that can tell Andy Fantuz's bald spot and can identify him for us. Dave, Jock, I'm going to need you on this one.
Yeah. We don't need Dave and Jock, though, to talk, of course, about the Saskatchewan Roughriders and their season opening win over the Edmonton Elks, as the Elks elked like they always do. So we'll get into that and a whole bunch more. But for that, John, for the Pile of Bones Brewing Company, what is in the glass this week?
Well, it was like a gift from heaven. I'm at a golf tournament on Tuesday. Exactly, that's what it was. And this is one of those tournaments that, much like Whose Line Is It Anyways, the scores are made up and they don't really matter anyways. So you just kind of get randomly drawn to go up to a table of prizes. So I walk up through the crowd and I go to the table of prizes and I'm like, looking, I'm like, okay, there's some gift cards, there's some. And then, Joel, can you hit the sound again? A 60-pound of Lucky Bastard vodka.
It was meant to be.
It was meant to be, with a sticker on it that says, thank you from your friends at Credit Union Dealer Finance. So thanks to my friends from Credit Union Dealer Finance and my ability to start drinking at 10 a.m. and still be functional and moving around at 5 p.m., I'm having a little Lucky Bastard vodka. On ice with lemon. Yes. Because I need something because the voice is shot from doing PA last night.
Yes, in front of the tens of people. For me, I will say, so the wife and I and our daughter spent the past week in Regina Beach. We rented a cottage out there, had a great time. Love cottage life, just kind of hanging out and not really worrying about anything, just sort of outside, but sort of inside, but not really in the middle of nowhere. You're not like, I don't mind camping, but I'm not a hardcore camper, but I do love the cottage kind of thing.
Oh no, I like, even for a kid from Northern Ontario, and this is probably going to get me banned from ever going to Atikokan again. Like, yeah, I'm super soft when it comes to camping. I don't want a tent. Find me some cushy ass thing indoors, maybe some AC. Keep the bugs away. Yeah, I hear you. I enjoy the outdoors. I don't enjoy roughing it, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't done it since like I was a kid and it was in like Cubs and Scouts and whatever. But I probably would camp again, but I don't think my wife would. So we're probably not going down that road. But I did bring some Lucky Bastard gin with us. I will say it actually makes a pretty good Caesar.
Oh, see, of all the things I have drank the Lucky Bastard gin in, I have yet to make a Caesar with it.
Well, you should try that because it's just the right amount of citrus that adds a good little kick to the Caesar. And unlike when you make a Caesar with vodka, you don't really taste the booze,
right?
Because it's vodka. So basically, unless you drink vodka straight, you're not really going to notice the booze,
right?
The gin does, you get like that gin flavor strong enough to actually punch through the clam. Like I just brought the clam like all in one mix rather than bringing up all the ingredients and all that sort of stuff to make one. I'm like, I'm just going to buy this one thing and make it easy.
Like hoisin sauce, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like hoisin sauce is included in it for sure. So the gin just kind of punches through it just enough, just a little bit to be like, okay, it's there and it's good. But in actuality, what I'm actually drinking right now is from our friends up your way in Saskatoon from 9 Legacy. The Rafiki Moha West Coast IPA. Probably my favorite of their core beers.
Yes, I would.
Just a nice, well-balanced IPA.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. I think that was the one we were at a kids dance recital.
Yeah. Okay, go on.
At TCU Place. And I had a couple of those while at the kids dance recital. That's the veteran move here. Like, again, I'm not going to get smashed at a kids dance recital.
No.
But if you give me the option to have a couple IPAs, I'm going to have a couple IPAs.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Does that mean I'm a functional alcoholic or just a beer snob?
Both. Yes.
Little from column A, little from column B.
Some people who probably needed some IPAs last week were Edmonton Elks fans, as a strong case of deja vu for them. The ones that at least made it out to Commonwealth and the some that stayed at home and watched. It was 21-8 for Edmonton in the fourth quarter, and then, wow, the wheels just completely came off. We saw interceptions, fumbles. You know, they took the 21-8 lead, I believe, and at that point it felt like it was over. Then the Riders came all the way back down and scored, and you're like, hang on, here we go. Because that was the moment, and I said it there, I'm like, this is the moment, like, we've seen the Elks fold so many times before in this exact situation when there's a punchback after what looked like their final blow. Let's see if they've learned anything. Let's see if they're coached better. Let's see if they got better. And Everything after that could have went wrong. And you have to give the Riders some credit for that, because this wasn't like them literally gifting them points. They gifted them the situations to score points, but the Riders still had to score the points, and they did to win the football game.
Oh, absolutely. The Riders took advantage. I was really impressed by the offense, but it was one of those perfect games that, like, you're kind of, and I was at work that day, so I was like kind of half-ass paying attention and while still working, and it was one of those moments you blinked, and next thing you know, it was a tie game. Because I thought the same thing. I'm like, okay, the offense is, I like the fundamentals of what they're doing. I like, the defense has been pretty good, exploited a little. It's game one. They don't look truly bad. They look like game one rusty. And then they get the touchdown. You're like, all right, great, boom, fumble recovery. And it must have been within, God, what was it actually in? I'm trying to figure it out here. 8, 12, 11. So in 3 minutes of game time, they scored 2 touchdowns. And it's just like, bam, all of a sudden they're in the game, and that seemed to wake them up. And the Elks, they're still gonna Elk, and which was impressive, because I thought that's the best the Elks have looked in a very long time, was that game.
Yeah. And that's the kind of loss, and we'll see kind of where they go from here. That could spiral a season, because everything was looking like, okay, we're not in the same spot we were last year. Everything's looking good, and then the exact same thing happened. So we'll have to see where they go. But you brought up the interesting point from that game, and I think even before the comeback, I don't think my post-game column, The Good, the Bad, and the Dumb, was really going to change all that much. I was really, really hoping for something dumber to happen. I didn't really want to beg on TSN in that spot, but
right,
it was a decently played football game for week 1, and there wasn't really anything too crazy that happened, quite frankly, like in a fun, chaotic sort of way to warrant that space. So that's what I did.
Why are so many dogs suffering from health issues? Actress Katherine Heigl, who's helped save over 16,000 dogs through her foundation, says she's seeing more issues with dogs' joints, odors, and health than ever before. And after doing a ton of research, she feels there's one place we can look to support any dog's health: their food. So she decided to create something she could actually feel good about feeding her dogs. It's called Superfood Complete. Superfood Complete is made with over 30 of the healthiest ingredients on the planet, including several superfoods vital to your dog's health. Badlands Ranch also sponsors the Jason Debus Heigl Foundation, which has helped rescue thousands of dogs and place them in loving homes. Dogs across America are trying this food and experiencing amazing health benefits. Go to badlandsranch.com/save50 and order right now to get up to 50% off your regular price order with a 90-day money-back guarantee. If you want your dog to experience all these incredible things, go to badlandsranch.com/save50 today.
When you need mealtime inspiration, it's worth shopping Kroger, where you'll find over 30,000 mouth-watering choices that excite your inner foodie. And no matter what tasty choice you make, you'll enjoy our everyday low prices, plus extra ways to save, like digital coupons worth over $600 each week. You can also save up to $1 off per gallon at the pump with fuel points. More savings and more inspiring flavors make shopping Kroger worth it every time. Kroger, fresh for everyone. Fuel restrictions apply. When you need mealtime inspiration, it's worth shopping Kroger, where you'll find over 30,000 mouth-watering choices that excite your inner foodie. And no matter what tasty choice you make, you'll enjoy our everyday low prices, plus extra ways to save, like digital coupons worth over $600 each week. You can also save up to $1 off per gallon at the pump with fuel points. More savings and more inspiring flavors make shopping Kroger worth it every time. Kroger, fresh for everyone. Fuel restrictions apply.
But even before they started piling on points in the fourth quarter and made the big comeback, I liked what I saw from the offense.
Yes.
And it was interesting because you and I were talking about it, and talking about it with a few other people too, was like, I don't remember very many, if any, passes kind of out to the flat or behind the line of scrimmage or any sort of that stuff in that game. And we saw it from the very first play of the game where they had Trevor Harris go deep. It didn't connect. It didn't work out, but right away you saw the thought philosophy of Mark Mueller with what he's got, saying, okay, everyone expects we're going to be a running team. Everyone expects we're going to be, the short passing team still. Let's air it out. And they did, and we found there's the CFL Stats website, a third-party thing that's being run right now with some of the more analytical stats that you don't necessarily find through the CFL. And Trevor Harris had the longest yards through the air on his completed passes throughout any quarterback of that week, which is well, and it was well above, I believe, coming into this year. And I believe you had the number. His average was kind of around 8 yards or so a pass. Yep. He was at like 12, so he was well above sort of his historical average in terms of how deep he generally throws the ball. So whether that was what the Elks were presenting them, what they thought they could be with the Elks, or if this is an overall philosophy, whatever it was refreshing to see. It's aggressive, and in the long term, process over results, as we've talked about a lot on this podcast, it will pay off.
Like you and I on the touchdown, the last touchdown, basically just going, oh my God, kill shot. Like,
yeah, because they easily could have killed more clock. They could have, slowly killed down the clock and whatever, maybe kick a field goal, tie it, take a lead, whatever. But they bombed it, and there it was, and there was like a 20-yard touchdown to take an 8-point lead.
Yep, 33 yards. I found it on the game summary right now, but again, that's not something you saw to this team, and if you're bringing in AJ Ouellette, you have to be able to have that risk that you're going to pass the ball and pass it deep. And Sean Bain was outstanding that game.
Yeah. And if Trevor Harris doesn't underthrow him a bit, he has 4 touchdowns.
Right.
Because that interception was a little underthrown, but he was gone. And that was a beautiful play call. Like, that was a well-timed, just an incredible play action all around. And Trevor just didn't quite get enough juice on it. So, I mean, that happens. But yes. Yeah, that's another one of those process over results moments where I'm like, okay, I liked everything about that except the throw, and I know at some point Trevor is going to make that throw, so there's no problem with that decision.
Well, and you can already see it's almost like having an offensive coordinator that wants to be here, that wanted to take this job, that wants to do good, not just the 17th guy you found behind a dumpster that you happen to give the job to because of the CFL coaching rules. Like, I loved everything I saw on offense, and even though like we both said, it started slow. Like, the fourth quarter explosion is what turned it around, and the Elks going to Elks, but again, they didn't. The other thing too that I really liked is they didn't get away from who they were going to be. The offense wasn't really connecting, wasn't really rolling in the first half in a significant way, and they still said, whatever, we're still going to throw it deep. We're still going to find our open receivers. We're still going to do the things that we're going to do this year. Yeah, you're shutting down Ouellette a bit. That's fine, but we're still going to push the pace. We're going to do all these things, and we're going to make sure you have to respect us as a dual threat team. And that already on film, you're going, okay, Sean Bain Jr. for MOP, like, I mean, all jokes aside, but you're seeing new wrinkles here, and wrinkles that are working and not cowering when Trevor Harris doesn't connect or just slips on a throw for, a guy that ends up being a pick. You don't see them all of a sudden go into their shell and go Tino Sinceri mode and just make all the short passes to get Trevor's confidence back. But yeah, my goodness, I thought Trevor looked good. I thought the offense looked really good. And we were talking a bit about the Bombers in our pre-taping conversation about you've got first game bad and you've got bad. I thought both teams at times in this one looked first game bad. I don't think either looked bad, and that's encouraging, I think, for both clubs.
Yeah, I think especially for the Riders, because we had no idea sort of what this was going to look like, even throughout the preseason. I don't think they really sent any indication that they were going to air it out as far and as deep as they did as often in this game.
Which I also love. I love that they we always talk about teams keeping it tight to the, keeping things tight to the chest and not revealing what they're going to do, and then they just go out and do the same thing that they've been doing. But for them to basically go all preseason, okay, we're going to run the ball, and maybe it's that extra week that they had to install, okay, here's what we're actually going to run. Like, I liked it. I like they came out and did something different, and so much different than last year's team.
It also kind of shows why Mason Fine wasn't going to be a quarterback on this team. I mean, the offense wasn't perfect. You talked about it. AJ Ouellette didn't exactly have a meaningful kind of day in the run game. I would have to go back and watch the film to see how his blocking was. I'm sure it was fine because the pass protection held up well. Yes. Outside of the 2 plays after Logan Ferland got tossed for punching a guy, that kind of broke down for a few plays there. But after that, it was fine again. which is a positive sign for this team after the last few years. The flip side of that, though, is the run protection was not good. That was part of the reason. Like, AJ Ouellette is not Jamal Morrow. He's not gonna, like, he will occasionally overpower guys, but that's still only gonna get you so far. He's not gonna be the guy that goes out there and dances around everyone. That sort of makes up for an offensive line that can't open holes for him a little bit sometimes. So maybe you don't pay a running back. But the fact remains, no matter who the running back was in that game, it wasn't necessarily going to lead to much success, at least in terms of running. I know AJ Ouellette does other things, but that is something that is going to have to change for this team going forward, because as much as I think in the CFL, it is still generally a pass-first league, and it should be, you do still need to be able to run the football at times, and so they'll have to figure that out. That's sort of like the one sort of blemish on offense, I would say, from that game, that you say, okay, this has to get better. Everything else I saw, I liked even before the comeback, even before they started piling up the points. It was like, okay, you can see where this is going, and you know it will eventually start to click. It's something that takes a little more time together, because the receivers and the quarterback have developed that timing downfield versus, okay, it's been a second, I'm just going to throw the ball to you.
Well, and I think, too, the only other negative, and you mentioned it, the good, the bad, and the dumb, is the penalties.
Yes, that's not so much the offense, that's just everyone.
Right. No, that's fair. And that is, I mean, Logan Ferland comes to mind being, an offensive member of the football team, but I feel like where penalties, penalties are always going to happen, but I feel like there will be accountability, and Corey Mace seems like he's not just going to go ho-hum while sipping on a Nokomis Brown Ale. Corey Mace is going to make guys, it's not like you're going to sit there and make everybody that took a penalty run a mile around a mosaic in your jockstrap. But, those film sessions, he's going to be the guy. He's going to be pointing out. He's going to be making you feel, like the old line from Slapshot. You go to the box for 2 minutes and you feel great shame.
Yeah, and I think that'll sort of be the interesting thing on where this goes from here. I know everyone says, okay, well, like, they rebounded from all that and they ended up winning, and that was great. Because there were some thoughts some people had that they wouldn't necessarily beat the Elks last year after some of the stuff that happened in that game. And I don't know, the Elks elked. So that's kind of what we saw last year too. So I'm not convinced that this is necessarily a sign that the team is mentally stronger than they were last year. Like, I do believe they are, but they haven't really proved it on the field yet, because Edmonton was just even mentally weaker.
Yes.
Than they were. So against any other team, the Logan Ferland situation was like the perfect spot. They were up 7-3. He takes the penalty. There's a couple of sacks after that. They have to punt from deep in their own end. And all of a sudden, the Elks come back and score, and they take the lead. And you're like, oh boy, here we go. And even later in the game, they had the 2-and-out. They got the 2-and-out late. And then there was the penalty, the taunting call. Yeah, Jaden Dahlke got called for the taunt, which, I mean, it was impossible to find on film, so at least in live on the broadcast, so I can't really comment one way or the other whether it was a legitimate penalty or not. At the end of the day, don't put yourself in the situation give the refs a chance to call that. And that was another one where you're like, if this was anyone against but the Elks, they probably would have lost that football game. Both of those scenarios were very easily big momentum turners that would have probably led to a loss against at least 6, maybe 7 other teams in this league.
No, you're absolutely correct. And I would even say, if the Elks weren't in week 1 mode and McLeod Bethel Thompson didn't look like, he looked good, like way better than I thought he'd look, but
he looked like McLeod Bethel Thompson.
Oh yeah.
At the end of the day, you're going to look at the numbers and be like, that was a pretty good game by that quarterback, but nothing really stood out as per usual.
No, and that's exactly who he is, right? He is going to make a lot of throws that make you go ooh and ah, and he's also going to make you a lot of throws that you go, huh. Well then, so it seemed like a little bit of both guys came out a little bit from it, but I thought, like, just again, eye test, strictly, watching as much as I could and then watching it on replay, I thought he looked good. So maybe that's a game that, you're almost forgiven for making the mental errors. You're forgiven for, I shouldn't say forgiven, but you can get away with it in the first game because neither team is sharp, and I don't know if that's something you can get away, because I was thoroughly impressed by the Elks. I was.
I don't know if I would say I was thoroughly impressed.
Again, the expectations are, it's like It's like that great meme of somebody holding up the sign that says, our expectations were low, but holy fuck. That's how I feel about the Elks. So anything that makes
there was the other thing they got away with late where they had just stopped the Elks. I believe they got the interception off McLeod Bethel Thompson, who's supposed to be the safe quarterback that's not going to throw an interception late in the game with the game on the line.
Except that's all.
And then they fumbled it right back to them. So
that
scenario where it's like, okay, you got away with one again there too. But yeah, that's my issue. Like McLeod Bethel Thompson was brought in to be the guy who's apparently not supposed to throw interceptions in that spot, and he threw an interception in that spot.
No, that's his thing. That's who he is. Like that's what he's always been.
Not that I want to talk about the Elks too much, but there was a spot earlier in the game where he kind of started to run around and got sacked, and I was like, Trey Ford would have made that throw. He would have made something happen there.
Like I said on the Sickos podcast, and I think I said it here, their best player is sitting on the bench right now.
Yeah,
and I mean that.
I
mean that as no disrespect to McLeod Bethel Thompson. That is not a shot at MBT. That is Trey Ford's that good.
Yeah, he's the most athletic, interesting, marketable player they have, and he remains on the bench.
So please, for the love of God, overreact and trade him to Winnipeg. I said I wasn't going to check the score. I just checked the score.
Yeah. Maybe one of the best Rider players without argument over the last 20 years is finally going into the Plaza of Honour.
Yes.
As the Riders have announced this week ahead of Week 2, heading to this game against Hamilton. This year's Plaza of Honour inductees, that of course includes Darian Durant, who I don't think this is much of a surprise now. After the last sort of calendar year, when you consider, I think heading into last season, we weren't entirely sure because if you don't know, like generally speaking, the Plaza of Honour is kind of decided upon in a number of different ways. One of the sort of criteria is that you're going to show up.
Oh, certainly. Yep.
And so the question was always, would Darian show up? And I don't think there was much interest on his part to show up.
Yes.
For a while there, sort of until I think enough stink from the Chris Jones era had surpassed, and sort of that whole situation he talked about. And you can find the piece on 3downnation.com right now where he talked about he actually sort of regrets not taking Chris Jones's offer at the time and sticking it out with the Riders instead of going to Montreal.
Yeah.
Though I won't. In hindsight, it's easy to say that. Obviously, in the moment, you're a competitor and you want to play, and I get it. I 100% get wanting to get as much money as you can and going to play. And it also led to the incredibly hilarious, legendary moment of him taking his pay from the Bombers and then retiring. So we would not have had that. If he had never gone to Montreal, we never would have got that legendary end to his career. So to that point, I say, Darian, bravo.
I mean, and realistically, I don't know if there's anything more pro Riders that he could have done other than, obviously signing with the team than to, go and eat $50,000 of Winnipeg's cap that season and be like, nah, deuces, see you later, bitches.
$75K, wasn't it?
It was, I think there was some deal that it was, I want to say they got the number down to 50 somehow through fancy math and everything like that.
Okay.
But yeah, it's either way, that was the most peak Riders thing, pro Riders thing he ever could have done. And I feel like that was the first extending the olive branch. And I'm glad to see, again, he is arguably, and you know what? I'm just going to say,
one of 3 quarterbacks to win a Grey Cup here. So, I mean,
and I'd put him 1A, 1B with Ron Lancaster for this team.
Yeah, for sure.
What he did basically built new Mosaic.
His play on the field allowed everything off the field to work for sure. Yeah,
exactly. And he brought in that dominant era, which was was the last. And I know there's only the one Grey Cup to show for it, or the 2 Grey Cups to show for it. But the Riders were the dominant team of that era.
Yeah,
and that was
for sure.
If Anthony Calvillo doesn't exist, they are undoubtedly the best team of that era, right? And to me, Darian Durant is the face of that, and I'm glad to see that he has mended fences. And even as far as, I know he's doing regular hits on the sports gauge with our boy Dave Thomas, and he's kind of come back into the fold and embraced it.
I think that was the sign that this was going to happen, I didn't know they would do it quite so fast, but it makes sense to get him in right away, was when he showed up last year for when the 2013 team went into Plaza. It was like, when they announced, okay, the 2013 team is going into Plaza, it's like, okay, if Darian shows up for this thing, we know everything's cool, and he's eventually going to get into Plaza like he deserves. If he doesn't, then this thing is still on the rocks.
Oh, 100%.
But he showed up, and not only did he show up, he showed up in a way that we've never really seen Darian show up. Like, as great as he was here, well, he wasn't exactly Mr. Go talk to all the fans, meet all the fans, do all the events, do that sort of thing, which is fine, absolutely fine. When you're the player, I mean, I get it. You're here, you're doing your job. I'm going to stay focused the way I can. He was very good at keeping sort of work and the rest of his life very separate, which in this market, especially as sort of starting quarterback, is very, very difficult to do.
Yep.
And that's why I think part of the reason why he was so successful at it. But he came back and embraced the whole thing, because he walked around that entire stadium and pretty much gave every single fan there an autograph.
He is actually still signing autographs if you look carefully. to steal from our friend, Fake Gainer. And like, to me, Durant obviously was always going in. Maybe a mild surprise. You could see it building. Mild surprise that it is so quickly. But to see Roy Shivers go in,
that's one of those about time situations. Like, I was not here
100%
in Saskatchewan at the time, but I was, I'm vaguely aware of the era that he was the general manager. And yeah, like, even Eric Tillman, for all his flaws, has said, we wouldn't have gotten over the hump if it wasn't for the work that Roy Shivers did. Like, he didn't get them over the finish line, but the whole 07-13 era wouldn't have happened without him.
Well, it's your classic case of a GM getting fired right before the team is great, because maybe they just weren't quite great yet, or weren't great in a timely fashion. So, I mean, I lived out here. I just moved out here, and obviously, being a Winnipeg fan, cared about the league back when I was living in Thunder Bay. But no, like, when I moved out here, everybody hated the guy, and I'm like, what? Like, you guys are like kind of on the upswing. You're kind of looking good. But no, he was persona non grata. So it is glad to see that, people can now look back at this entire era and be like, this doesn't happen without him. And really, to recognize the face of that area in Durant, like, and he's one of those guys that's super well spoken. They both are. Like, normally you see these guys go in the Plaza, you're like, like, I don't, like, me as the casual observer going, I don't know. I don't really have a taste of going, but like, if you had an extra ticket, I'd think about it, right? Well-spoken guys. It's going to be a great night. But it's funny, on some of these Plaza classes, I almost feel bad for Steve Molnar's family.
Yeah.
Because, like, you got, like, two heavyweights of rider greatness, and then you got Steve Molnar, who deserves to be there as well. I'm not making that argument that, oh, no, this guy shouldn't be here, but it's like, Darian Durant, Roy Shivers, and Steve Molnar.
Yeah, I mean, that's always going to happen.
Oh, 100%.
No matter what. And like, it's kind of weird. In a way, it kind of eventually, so I think it sort of worked out in the end between Shivers and Durant. Like, I know there was a serious thought, and I agreed at the time, and I still agree in general, that I think Durant and Dressler should have gone in together.
Yes.
You can maybe even include Chris Getzlaff and Rob Bagg sort of as one whole unit to go in there together.
Yeah.
In a way, I mean, Shivers was the one that brought Durant to Saskatchewan.
Yeah.
So, in a way, the both of them were the start of what became the new era. And does Durant ever even end up here without Roy Shivers?
No.
We don't know. Probably not.
No, probably not.
So, in a roundabout way, it took a long time to get there, and way too long, way longer than it should have. But the fact that maybe the Roy Shivers didn't get the call sooner eventually worked out, because I think he's going in with a pretty fitting guy.
No, certainly. And because even you got to remember, Durant was the third string quarterback in that 2007 team that was one of the many times the Bombers broke my heart with me in attendance.
Every day, we rise, challenging ourselves to work for what we believe in. At U.S. Border Patrol, protecting our borders is more than a job. It's a calling. Agents answer the call, working together to keep our country and communities safe. If you're ready for a new mission, join U.S. Border Patrol and go beyond. Learn more at cbp.gov/careers.
What if you could have a career where the opportunities are as vast as our nation, where it's not about mission statements, but a shared mission. At U.S. Customs and Border Protection, we go beyond to protect more than borders. From ship to shore, air to ground, cities to local communities, CBP agents and officers are keeping people safe. Join U.S. Customs and Border Protection and go beyond for something far greater than yourself. Learn more at cbp.gov/careers.